donate.
It's that kind of day.
All right, opening up the property subcommittee meeting on 4/25/2017. What do we have for a time?
03.
6:03 p.m. All council members present. We have Mr. Check, Mr. Tosnick, and Ms. Zawadzki. I would like to just speak to the public for a moment to say that this is something that we've never done in our community, and I'm not aware of too many. I think there was once in Massachusetts that I'm aware of, and there may be many more cases where long-term leases of 40 or more years have put in place. So, although it's a very rare event, it's not unprecedented. But certainly, I don't recall anything like that being done in our community ever. So, we're here to listen and open up.
Well, let me give you a little history first, and then Ed, you can go into today.
Absolutely.
So when we moved out of Town Hall in 2003 to move here, we left it vacant, obviously, for a short period of time, and did sort of a, I don't want to say a visioning because it wasn't quite that formal, but did some public outreach trying to figure out what do people want in the building, how should it fit. And you're aware that we've been focusing on cultural activities and whatever.
Absolutely.
So we decided that we were going to try to...
You're doing a good job with it, I say. I'm sure the committee members would agree.
It's working. And so we said, well, gee, let's think about how Town Hall could fit into that. And so we came up with the concept that carries forward today, that it could be the center for arts in the community. We had stopped using the upper Town Hall because it was not accessible. The fire escapes had failed. We were able to replace one on the north side of the building, the one that exists there now. The one that was on the south side of the building, we just didn't have enough funding for. But it's never been handicapped accessible.
Right.
And so once we started investing in the building, we couldn't meet code. We did a sprinkler system in the building. We prepared the system for sprinkling the second floor, but didn't do that because we weren't sure how we were going to reconfigure it. When the bids went out, so the sprinklers after the bid, but when the bids went out, we had 2 respondents. And I had spent some time talking to lots of people in town about, what a great idea, whatever. And one of the respondents was the local theater company that was here in town at the time, Pace. And the other was a not-for-profit that was created for the purpose of bringing the town hall forward as an arts space, and that was City Space. So Ed, you, and Will were the prime movers on that. And we awarded it to City Space primarily because they want to and continue to want to have it as a place for everyone.
Right.
So it won't be just a theater company, like the Majestic Theater in West Springfield, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Pace, on the other hand, at the time, and certainly in hindsight, we're happy we didn't go with Pace, but at the time, Pace wanted it exclusively to their purposes, and we didn't really see them as having a vision about the building.
Right.
Because it's a remarkable building, very historic. And City Space really was created and dedicated to that. And so City Space was created, and we signed the first lease in 2006.
Yep.
We did a 10-year lease because that was the maximum allowed without further action of city council or state legislature. And I wanted a lease that had a sort of a horizon because it was it was uncharted territory. This organization was brand new. It didn't scare me at all, but it's like, well, it's brand new. Who knows? Is the community gonna take it up? Or are they gonna find tenants? Lots of things. So we ended up with a 10-year lease that we actually executed like over 3 junctures.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially it expired after 4 years, and then there were addendums that we
So I think
continued another 2.
The original lease was like 10 years, so here's 4.
Right.
And we'll renegotiate once we figure out what
At
we're
the
doing.
5th
And it was
year.
an opportunity to back out
Right.
if it wasn't working.
It was structured really well. I remember going
We had
through
a
it because
good
I was
time.
on the historical commission at the time, and we did a walkthrough when you were doing your grant funding. And you all have stayed very close to the vision that originally got forward, and I think the progress that you've made in rehabilitating the space has been very thoughtful and made sense,
So that was the history. That's kind of from the mayor's office, how we came forward. And I think, Ed, you can talk more about kind of what City Space has done there and what our vision is.
I mean, very briefly, I mean, the first thing was, we originally only had the first floor.
Yes.
In the lease. We only had, access to the first floor, and that's what we were paying the city, as a tenant itself.
Yeah.
And then what we did, in fact, was, Jean-Pierre, who owns the frame shop, Big Red Frame, was the first tenant who moved in. And then there was, there was work along the way, because all those tiny offices, and we had to open up the space. Flywheel, East Hampton City Arts and East Hampton Historical, the Cultural Council was the next group to move in, and then Flywheel finally moved into the back. And so the first couple of years were just about getting them settled and any repairs that had to happen there. One of the first things that we thought, when the tenants lived there, a lot of people complained that it was just too dark at night. And so one of the first things we did was to light up the building and light up the towers, which I thought was great, because I thought, it's like, these towers are magnificent, that they would be so beautiful at night if they were lit up.
Yeah.
And so that really was one of the first things that we did after the first floor renovations we had. After that, and as City Space was sort of finding its way, then we aggressively decided to go for a grant that would help us renovate the first floor, the lobby of the first floor.
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of you remember, just it was a mess. The linoleum on the floors, the paint was peeling down. There was also issues with the bathrooms downstairs. One bathroom didn't even work, and so we had to put a little money into that. And so the natural progression of this, this nonprofit was, okay, well, hey, we moved up the building, we moved it to the first floor, we have our lobby now, we're slowly moving upstairs, and now we have this incredible grand, assembly room on the second floor that really needs.
Yep, and I think we can all agree that the work itself and the building itself have all gone really swimmingly. I'm more interested in how the business itself is structured.
Yeah.
So you're a nonprofit and your offices are in the building as well?
No, well, we don't have an office.
Right.
We meet there, we have our monthly meeting, and we usually meet in one of the tenant spaces. And one of the things is to create an office up on the second
Right.
floor.
So the
So the
agreement.
mail
we-
comes here.
Right, so
Yeah.
the agreement, that makes sense. So the agreement that we currently have right now, do we have a copy of our lease?
We are currently now, because
We've extended it.
2006, so in,
Are
at
you
the end of.
leaseless?
No, we have
No.
a 2-year lease.
Okay.
So we currently just have a 2-year lease, and this being the first year of that 2-year lease.
Karen went out with an RFP.
Right.
And we had already had some preliminary conversations about this second floor space.
Right.
Right.
And how there are tax credits, historic tax credits available to nonprofits.
Yeah.
Not available to the city, but to nonprofits. And we said, well, gee, what's it take to get that? And turns out you
And I
have.
think that's the PDF that you sent us, they expire in like 2022
Yeah,
or
I'm not
something
sure.
like
I'm
that,
not
yeah.
sure.
I'm not sure about that, but
It was a lot of fun with Mass General
This,
Law
when
earlier
we,
today.
yeah, when we were doing our, over the summer, we received a grant to work with Goodwill and of how we could, what we can do with upstairs and where we can locate an elevator.
Yeah.
And that's really where it was brought to our attention about these historic credits,
Right.
And in reading that, I'll just read it briefly. A tenant can pursue historic credits if they are a long-term leaseholder and the lease extends beyond the depreciable life of the building, 39 and a half years for a commercial building. Typically, we see leases being a minimum of 44 years. And then it goes into the under IRS regulations, and it explains all
Right.
of this.
So for-
that's what planted the seed, of like, we need a longer lease.
So forgive me, I tried to find some of
Yeah.
this information online, I wasn't
Yeah.
able to do it. So you're a nonprofit, and your mission statement for the nonprofit is to make this a vibrant cultural center
Yes.
in the former building.
Yes.
And the
it
way
is-
that you're doing that is
Right.
you are being basically the landlord and overseeing renting these other spaces.
Yes, but our mission is to restore, preserve, and manage Old Town Hall as a vital center for the arts in the city of East Hampton. So yes, we are managing it, but we also want to restore and
Right.
preserve it. And
So
that's,
I'm
that's,
looking
that's how
at
we're
the-
available for a lot
I'm
of
looking
these-
at this from an
money.
income generating point of
Yeah.
view. So you have people paying rent on the first floor.
Yes.
And the value of those spaces have gone up over the past couple of years? You've definitely improved the space.
Yes.
Okay. So, and are they market rate businesses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So how many market rate spaces do you think you're going to get on the second floor?
Well,
Just one?
It's it's
It-
intended to be an entertainment
Okay.
center.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to compare it to the Academy of Music, the
Mhm.
Academy of Music is a rental house.
Right.
Any artist can come in there if they can afford it, you know, and they rent it out, depending on, well, by the day, and then, I don't know if the Academy of Music has a sliding scale or not.
It's not my understanding.
I don't think they do, because they're a union house. Where
Correct.
this would not be a union house.
Yes.
So I
Also
think
a
that, I
question.
think it's our intention to have a sliding scale for
Mhm.
different nonprofits who want to rent it. And then usually, you know, you rate it as, well, rehearsal nights are not as expensive as the actual performance nights.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's how you sort of figure it.
So would it be an event space, like anybody could go in and rent that space from you?
Yeah.
So would there be like a fee for East Hampton residents and
We
a
haven't
different fee for
structured
like
that yet.
non?
Yeah, we haven't
We haven't
really
even
done
had
that.
that conversation, the depth of
Uh-huh.
conversation yet.
Right.
Gotcha.
I mean, it is more focused on the performing arts.
Correct.
And what I mean by that is, like, we don't have a kitchen up there
Mhm.
that somebody could have a catered event. I mean,
Right.
what do I want to say? Just, it's not really set up for a wedding.
Right.
Although somebody
Exactly.
could.
Absolutely.
But
Be
then you would have,
surprised where they
you'd
get
have to
married
bring in
then.
all that food. And
Yeah.
So I think it's more tailored toward performing arts of, you know, dance, music, theater.
Mm-hmm.
So the work with Coombe Riddle ended up in a study, and I don't know if we've gotten that to you or not. You have it on PDF, right?
We do, and I thought it
You
was.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for, because
Yeah.
it had gotten passed around city council, but there was, I
Yeah.
didn't,
So,
I wasn't able to
so
find
the
it
the
anywhere.
intent here is to figure out a way for us to be able to afford what might be a $4 million project.
Correct.
Right.
And when we went into this current lease, Karen raised the rent to about, I think it's $20,000 a year?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is a lot more than it used to be.
But, yeah.
Oh, it's
But
more than
whatever.
doubled.
And so the city gets income from us and from T-Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a T-Mobile broadcast in there. And when we put them in, we brought in a 600 amp three-phase electrical service.
Mhm.
Because the whole concept was that this building will be used more. This study would put in an all-floors elevator, remove the existing stage, which was after-the-fact installation.
Mhm.
We would build new bathrooms, a green room, and a small office, and some storage where the stage is now.
Right.
Mass Historic has already looked at it, they've set some requirements that we have to keep, something that sort of looks like what was the stage.
Yeah, comply for their
you know.
grants,
Yeah.
so that.
And so that'll be there, and it's intended to be
What do they call it,
essentially
like
like a
kind and
black
quality?
box sort of a space.
Mhm.
So it'll, we'll have tables, chairs, risers, whatever, they'll all be in storage, and people can construct it any way they want to use it. They want to make it a theater and a round, they want to have a conventional stage. Lighting and sound would be included.
And it also really addresses the heating and cooling.
And yeah, the biggest piece is will be
Is
heating and cooling.
because-
Right now,
It's a
it's
big empty
still
space to heat and
steam.
cool, yeah.
Well, right now, the building is still steam, and that works fine on the first floor.
On the first floor.
But if you recall, there are 2 steam space heaters in the upper town hall.
Yeah.
And even on a really good day, with all the heat cranked up, we could never bring that hall up in the winter to a comfortable
No,
temperature.
only bodies.
So the thought is that we would probably end up putting in heat pumps, HVAC system. It would likely, it's not been designed, but I'm guessing it would likely be in the attic. There's a large attic in that building.
Right.
Right.
We insulated that whole building, while it was still there, probably in 12
Right.
or 11. And so that building's had all kinds of insulation
How
blown in
was
upstairs.
it insulated? Just briefly.
Blown in.
Blown in attic space
Yeah.
for the most part,
Yeah.
the sidewalls,
Can't really
they can't
do
really
wall-
do.
no, it's
but-
great.
yeah, yeah,
You
I'm
can't
just
really do
saying,
that.
Okay.
We would.
Basement separated from the first floor by insulation in any way?
Nope.
No, okay.
And a part of that is that Jean-Pierre's workshop has no heat in it. What used to be the selectmen's meeting room, if you go back far enough.
Some of us do in this room, right? But-
Second office on the right.
Sure,
as you
I have
walk
no
in.
idea what you're talking about.
Because it's above the boiler.
Okay.
And so that steam boiler would keep that room in the winter nice and toasty.
Yep.
And so the heating system, it's got some zones, we can control it to some extent, but it, you know, you're never gonna keep it. And so this project.
Right. It's no heat in the lobby. And if it was a performance space upstairs, you would have to have air conditioning. I mean,
Yeah.
it is
So
really.
who's on your team? Who do you have on your team?
On the board?
On the board, yeah.
Currently, there are 9 of us,
Mhm.
and,
Are you gonna lead it?
huh?
Were you
I wasn't
planning on
going
leading
to, but I can. I mean, or I can send it to you digitally.
I have a question. It may not even be a question. For the purposes of this meeting, though,
It is on the website.
are we, so we're not evaluating the space or the grant or any of that thing. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss 30 versus 40. The
Well-
current 30 is legislative, right? I mean, that's already, that's like as high as we can go based on current laws.
You know, there was an opinion from the city solicitor, I'm sure you can find it, but I think you may be correct, that
Yeah.
30 is the maximum.
And you wanna go to 40, at
Well,
least, to get the grant.
In order to be able to get the grants, we wanna go to 40.
Okay, and
so
that's really what we're
that's
talking
the
about.
the crux of it is that in order to do that, we need the city council and the mayor to agree to file a special act with the state legislature, and then we need the House and Senate and the governor to agree.
Okay.
And that
there's
would then
precedent,
give
what you were
permission to
saying,
the
yeah.
city to issue the lease.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so we haven't even talked about the terms of the lease. This is really a much different use of the building than we currently have. I don't know what that structure will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we're in a place to have that conversation yet.
Mhm.
Right.
Which is why we wanted a 2-year lease now to kind of figure it all out.
Figure it out, yeah, yeah.
To give us
Well,
some
no, because
time.
it sounds like there would be a lot involved, because it's like, are the other people, are they subletting from you?
Yeah,
Because we're renting.
that's the way it
to
works,
them?
yeah.
that's-
Yeah, I wasn't able to figure out how any of the deal was structured.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're the leasehold and we sublet, and our lease allows us to sublet.
Right.
And that's how city space makes ends meet.
And who will be involved in the negotiations of that lease? Does that will come back to property as well?
I would guess.
The mayor and the city
I- I
solicitor.
Mayor Sutton?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
however that works for you. I haven't researched it.
So
I
our
don't know.
role here is to say, yeah, we agree that this is a good idea to move to 39 and a half years-ish.
Mhm.
Take it to city council, they agree, and then basically we're telling the mayor, go forth and do the legislation.
And work the
Do
other
what
side.
you ever need
That's
to do.
essentially what we're doing. So we have the obligation of seeing what's been going on, I think looking at their situation, at their financials, how it's
Mhm.
organized, reviewing the lease that it currently has been over the last 10 years, just to get a sense of that.
Mhm.
Kind of projecting, I think, what it might look like, who the potential occupants are, what the uses are. Yeah, I hear you talk about performance space. I mean, does that mean like live bands and concert hall?
Yeah.
Sure.
Theater.
And it's not just,
Dance. The nice thing about that space, it's one of the few that's absolutely no barriers inside.
It's just wide
right, which is
open.
wide open.
Yeah.
I mean, could it, I mean, I hear you talking about weddings, I mean, I don't know, I mean, that's a good source of
It could be
income.
tremendously income
I mean,
generating.
and that would be good for the arts, I think, it'd be good for the community.
Could you have
Good
It
for
just would
that,
have to be
profit.
structured
Absolutely.
in a way that
In fact, it's
that makes a lot of
designed where
sense.
there's one wall with a movie screen. So
Oh,
if
that's
if somebody
fun.
wanted to have a film festival, or,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be great.
Yeah, we're trying to make it very flexible.
Right.
Yeah, I just have
Well,
one.
and I'm sure if there had been a problem with you guys like being late with your rent or not doing anything, we would have heard anything like that. So, I mean, I don't see any problem with that, with us moving this forward.
Conceptually, I have no problem, I just would like to see a little bit more of the details. I haven't seen a copy
Of-
the lease, of the current leases.
Well,
how
so
they're-
the lease
how they're
isn't
structured,
negotiated
what the-
yet.
No, the previous leases. what-
Wouldn't that be like immaterial, essentially, because that
Well,
lease.
it's not gonna certainly.
So-
It's
so
not
it's not
gonna
predicated on
look
the
like
top
it.
level.
So I'm sure that Karen's office can get you a
Yeah,
copy.
I think we can get
Lease, because
that.
they have it. It's a 2-year deal. The rent is fixed for both years at 20 grand a year, or 1,670, or whatever the number is monthly. And the city pays for the heat and utilities at this point. And that was a deliberate, so I'll take blame or responsibility, however you want to put it. My concern always had been that, you know, you don't want the building to go cold, you don't want the building to go dark. This new nonprofit, who knows whether they were gonna have enough, I mean, I think we can maybe do something differently down the road on that, but for now, the city continues to pay to maintain the basics of the building. It's still a city building, so it's still on your insurance, which it should always stay there. And I personally never gave a second thought to selling. I didn't think that any private
Yeah.
entity would do it justice. And it needs, still needs a lot of historic work as well as this kind of work that we're doing.
No, we're actually fortunate that this nonprofit formed.
Yeah, it's
came
worked out
together
really
and put
well
Together,
from-
like, it's, the way that this deal is structured is, it's not very common in Massachusetts to kind of have this nonprofit run a public building. It's pretty good. I mean, I would make a motion that we, move forward with allowing a 40-year lease over the typical state legislation and allow them to start negotiating a 40-year lease.
Because I don't think, and I, before we, I would second it in a second. Because I don't think, I mean, I can see the wheels turning in your head. And I don't think we need to figure out what the deal's gonna look like. That's for the mayor and the lawyers and all of the people to figure out. Our job is to figure out, do we think it's a good idea for this building and for them to get the credit, for the tax credit, for the additional years that we would have to tack on? For the purpose of a tax credit, is that a good idea? And I'm very much for it.
Certainly for a tax, I would agree, for a tax
Yeah.
credit, that makes a lot of
Like-
sense. I'd like to try to understand the tax credit, maybe you guys can help us with that. How does the
Well-
tax credit get applied for? You, the owner of the corporation, would have,
So, very
The lessor would
very
have the
simply put,
credit.
very much like the tax credits for this housing project. The not-for-profit, in our case, would sell the credits. And so we would apply for the credits based on historic renovation of the building. There would be a dollar value assigned to, I don't know, would we talk about 800,000, 900,000?
So I don't understand why motion.
That was a guess.
Sorry, what?
the motion was acknowledged, it wasn't seconded.
I haven't
at this
seconded it
moment.
yet.
No one's.
We're
So
still
the motion
discussing.
isn't currently on the table.
And so
I mean,
generally,
yeah,
But
without
I
a
may
second.
in a second, so
Right.
hang on.
and so generally speaking, it's a market-driven thing where someone who can use the credits, some for-profit, someone who wants the tax credits, because they can use them, will pay 85 cents on the dollar. Or in this case, we might even be able to find someone who's more generous and maybe we'll get closer to 90. But that's a negotiation thing. And so a credit to a nonprofit has no value
No value.
whatsoever because we
Right.
don't pay taxes. But to a for-profit person who is making money, it's a good way for them to make a little bit, 10, 15%, and reduce their tax liability.
Right.
So there's a
That all-
great
that all makes
market.
sense.
There's a great market for that.
Does that then, so then the corp, essentially we'd be saying, if we did this, that the corporation would have 800,
Well, the project has to move forward.
85% of
Whatever it is,
850,000, let's call it $1 million for a moment, the corporation would have 850,000.
Tied to a project.
Tied to the, no, you'd have cash.
No, it would, but it would, the credit is tied
The
to the
credit is tied to the project being undertaken, completed,
Exactly.
and then.
So the rest of the funding has to be put in place, it has to move forward, and the credits would then come in. One of the things.
The credits would come in, you sell them piecemeal, year by year, they'd
Oh, I'm
be sold at
guessing.
once. I don't understand.
When we talked to the consultant, it sounded like it was a one-shot deal.
So then.
You put the whole project out.
My question is, that it would reduce the cost for the project, is that?
It would go
is that a-
against the project, yeah.
So I had thought this was a $4.8 million project when I read the bottom line. Was it?
Whatever it is, yeah.
So we reduce it, so then the city would benefit
Yeah.
by having essentially, because the city is
Well,
going
it's money
to
the city
fund
isn't
most of
gonna-
it
Well, I'm-
anyway.
I'm thinking that
Hopefully,
he'll-
if you're going to apply for a CPA grant.
Yeah, I'm sure that we're gonna ask the city for a significant part of it. We're probably gonna try to fundraise some of it, capital campaign, that sort of thing. We've actually had some preliminary discussions about that. But again, we We haven't even gone deep into that, partly because we're still waiting on the grant to do the design work to get a good number. So the number we have is somewhere between 4 and 5 million. It's a, you know, it's a concept number. We think it'll cost this much to build an elevator, we think it'll cost this much to heat it, we think it'll cost this much to change the electrical in the building, inside the building, the feed is great.
And historically, I feel like you've risen to every challenge you came across on the first floor, because that wasn't all wine
No,
and
they've done a
roses
wonderful
either.
job.
I mean, you
Oh,
had
yeah,
a real
it was
problem.
a total learning curve too.
And you
know,
did a
so-
great job with the architecture as far as doing like kind and quality with all of the front doors, all of the lighting, all of the tile. I mean, aesthetically, I think you've done a good job. You haven't cheaped it out. And
Now, City Space is a great steward of that building. I mean, it could not have,
It
it really
really
could not have
absolutely is.
worked better.
Which is why my confidence level is high.
And now I'm on the board.
Well, I
You're
could
you're the treasurer of
reconsider.
the board, is that correct? Yeah.
To Jen, did you make a motion?
I did.
I will second that motion.
So the motion, if you could repeat it for the record, since we'd want to write down exactly what the motion is.
The-
Unless you
To move
recall it, unless you
for-
recall it
well,
exactly.
A motion to move
No.
this forward to the city council. To approve.
Yeah, would you
To
approve it
approve.
as written, and we are totally comfortable with the idea of a 40-year lease for space?
To move forward with approval for.
Recommend? Is that
To
what it is?
recommend.
Mhm.
We do recommend for.
And allow
approval.
them to begin negotiating.
Because
Or
the,
making, asking for the
But
variance.
we're not, what we're
Let me
doing is.
finish. To allow them to make the statewide legislative adjustment that we need.
40 years, right?
At least 39 and a half.
Yeah.
And up.
that was it.
Typically, it's 44, is that what you said?
For.
That's what the
was-
consultant said.
That was the
Yeah, that
consultant's
was the-
report.
the-
So
Yeah.
someplace north of 39 and a half.
Exactly.
Can we just write 40?
We
That's right.
requested a
Come
40.
on.
Why don't we write
Right.
40? That was the original request. I mean, that makes sense. All right. Any further discussion or questions by members of the committee? Then let's put it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Very simple.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much,
Thank you.
and thank you for bringing
I'm
that.
excited as heck.
That's
Uh,
great.
We're excited.
It's gonna take a
for-
little
We are
while.
excited for you.
And
No,
I'm
it's-
retiring at 18, so this is gonna become my volunteer job.
And I thank you. There aren't a lot of really solid, good vision projects happening right now, and it's really nice to hear about this.
Yeah.
Very
I
passionate
appreciate
about
it.
Yeah.
A lot.
And so is it my understanding now, the next thing that will happen will be that you will go to the city
City
council,
council.
and then we will have to.
Recommend their
And then we'll
approval.
have to go in front of the city council.
So that'll be a week from tomorrow.
Do you have this on public hearing or anything? Do we need a public hearing?
I don't
I'm not
believe we need a
sure if we
public
do. This is very unusual. I think we have to check on it.
No.
But if we do not on public hearing, I see no reason why we can't have an next regularly. scheduled.
Right, if it's public hearing, we'll probably have to.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
further.
okay, okay.
So.
Well, thank you, that's great.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for
Thank you
coming.
very much.
Melissa, did you have any other further comments? You're very quiet over
What's
there.
the point now?
Well, our whole council hasn't voted, so I think that would be the important point here. All right, that being no
Are we
comments?
good? We're good?
Thank you.
We are, thank
Thank
you.
you.
And your phone.
Ah, yes. Everything's falling out of my pockets.
Are we on?
Anything else?
No.
Move- do I
Move to
entertain a move
close?
to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That concludes.